Okay, so today we're moving on to quadratic functions. So we've done linear functions and we just finished our exponential functions. So this is our last function that we'll talk about in Algebra 1. And today we're just going to be looking at the key features. Okay, so in terms of key features with some of our other functions, you've seen X-Intercept, Y-Intercept, you've seen slope with linear. So we're going to be identifying some of those key features with quadratics, and as you'll see, we'll have some new vocabulary in here. Okay, so we'll start off with our first one, which is our Y-intercept. That's going to be where our graph crosses the y-axis. So for this graph, that's going to be 0, 5. Okay. Now with quadratics, when you're looking at your x-intercepts, it can cross the x-axis up to 2 times. So it can either cross 2, 1, or not at all, which we'll talk about that in the future. For this graph, we have 2 x-intercepts. One is right here and one is right here. Okay, so this first one is going to be 1, 0. And this one here is going to be 5, 0. Okay, so when I write out my answer, I'm going to write 1, 0, and I'm going to write 5, 0 because it's 2 of them. Okay, these points are also called our solutions, roots, and zeros. So if I have a solution, I'll just write x equal 1 and x equals 5. Okay. If they ask for the roots, that's just going to be my intersections. And then for my zeros, it's just going to be that x value only. So 1 and 5. Okay. Now let's move on to some of our new vocabulary. So we're going to have what is called a vertex. So vertex will be either your highest point or lowest point of the graph. Okay, and we're going to write that as a coordinate point. So you're really just looking at the graph and seeing what does this point fall? And that falls on 3, 4. So I'm going to write 3 and I went 4 down. So that's 3, -4. Okay. Then from there, my vertex can either be a minimum or a maximum point. If it's on the bottom, that's going to be a minimum point because that's just saying that that's the lowest point that our graph can go. Okay. And if it's on top, that's going to be our maximum. So since this one is on the bottom, this is going to be a minimum point. And when I ask you for the minimum value, you just want the y value of your vertex. So that's going to be -4. And as you see here, this is the lowest that the graph is going to go, and then it's going to keep going up. Okay, so that's our minimum value. Now, access of symmetry, you probably heard the word symmetry before. Symmetry just means that it's an imaginary line that's going to split our graph in half. Okay, and that line is also going to be going straight through the vertex. Okay, so if we remember, our vertex went through 3, -4. So when we write our axis of symmetry, notice this is a vertical line and it's going through 3. So my axis of symmetry is going to be x equals 3. Okay, you must write that as a line. If you just put 3, that's not going to get you full credit. So make sure you put x equals 3. All right, then our last part, we have domain and range. Domain is where the graph starts and where it stops. So as we see, we have arrows on both ends, so it's going to keep going to the left to -infinity, and it's going to keep going to the right to +infinity. So if it's going from -infinity to +infinity, that's going to be all real numbers. Okay, then with our range, this is going to kind of go back with our min and max value. Okay, if I said that my graph has a minimum value of 4, that means that that graph, or -4, that graph cannot go lower than -4. Okay, which means all of my y values will be greater than or equal to -4. Again, it's starting at -4 and it keeps going to the top to infinity. All right, so those are your key features of quadratics. Let's look at some of the examples. Okay, so our vertex. Okay, this is going to be 0, -9. Okay, remember our axis is symmetry. It will go straight through our vertex. Okay, and it's going through 0 on the x-axis, so I'm going to have x equals 0. Now for my x-intercepts or my root solution zeros, we have 2 of those. This first one is crossing at -3, 0, and this second one is crossing at 3, 0. Okay, my y-intercept, notice my y-intercept and vertex are the same. Okay, now that's only for this problem. It may not always work out like that, but this one did. Then I want to see, is it a minimum or maximum point? So this point here is my lowest point. So we're going to put minimum, and our minimum value is -9 because that's the y value of our vertex. Okay, domain, this quadratic function is going to keep going. So domain are real numbers. And anytime we're dealing with a quadratic, it's always going to be all real numbers unless they provide some type of restriction. So if they put maybe like a dot somewhere, or if they give me like a word problem, which gives me a scenario, that'll be what changes that out. Okay. Now again, with my range, my minimum value is -9 and it's going up. So I'm going to have y is greater than or equal to -9. All right, so this next one, I want you to try it on your own. If you can, pause the video and try it on your own. Then once you're ready, look at the answers and see if you got it right. Okay, go ahead. All right, so let's look at it. So my vertex, okay, it's at the top this time. Okay, but this point is going to be -1 and +4. Our axis is symmetry. That's our line. Sorry about the crookedness. That's going to be x equals -1. Our x-intercepts, we have 2 of them. So our first one is -3, 0, and our second one is 1, 0. Okay, our y-intercept is right here at 3, so we have 0, 3. Now this time, our vertex will be a maximum value, okay, because it is, this 4 is at the top, okay? So our maximum value will be 4. Domain is still going to be all real numbers because this is still a quadratic function. And our range, since this is the maximum point, notice is going to end off at 4, -4, +4. Okay, let me rewrite that. And it's going to go down to -infinity. So this time our graph is going to be y is less than or equal to 4.